here with Clementine Moss, author, songwriter, musician, and the founding member of the popular all-women's Zeppelin cover band, Zepparella. And Clem has just released a new book called From Bonham to Buddha and Back. And I should also say that Clementine is a depth hypnosis practitioner and does quite a bit of work for us behind the scenes at the Foundation of the Sacred Stream. And it's really great to have you on this side of the video. Clem, welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Having a conversation with you, I can't imagine a more lovely afternoon.
Well, I'm so glad we made it. We've been talking about this for a while, so I'm so glad we were able to make this happen today. So, before we dive into the book, you just got back from India, from a meditation retreat there. How was that?
It was, I felt so happy to go to India at this time because my whole life I knew I would go to India, just having studied, Buddhist and Hindu philosophy and practices for so long. And I knew that it was going to be a big deal for me to go. And at different points in my life, I would ask, is it time yet? Is it time yet? And this happened so effortlessly and kind of showed up in my life kind of effortlessly. And as I was going to the airport, I thought, wow, it's so amazing to know that, what you think is going to happen can happen. So, and I went without any, I think, misconceptions that I had that I maybe would have had 5 years ago, or kind of romantic vision of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and was staying with, wonderful meditation teacher, Ishtar Howell, and he was teaching a teacher training. And so I was in the house with the students. I wasn't taking the training, but I was in with these students, these young people. And that was really lovely and wonderful to be with people who are so devoted, to understanding themselves and spiritual practice. And then India itself is just full-on reality in every sense, all the time. Good, bad, beautiful, transcendent, and grimy and upsetting. And so, it was a spiritual practice to just be with what is. And when I came back, I said, I think the one thing that I learned when I was in India is that I don't know anything. I really don't know anything about the way things should be. I just have to let that go and just be with what is. So that's a great lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope to go back. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you say some more about that? Not knowing anything?
Yeah. I go, here's a country that, was, kind of run by imperialists for a long time, right? And you get there and you think, okay, why aren't these services here? Why isn't this like this? Why, and then I started thinking, why do I think I know best? And why do I think that the way that I view my life applies, should apply to everybody? Now, on the other hand, I'm thinking, everybody deserves to be safe and healthy and eat good food and healthy food. And, to me, that seems like kind of just fundamental things. But, there are other just ways of being that are very different. The lives are very different that people are living. And I was really trying to set aside judgment and thinking that I knew better, and really trying to open my heart and learn from what I was shown. And, I made great friends with my, the tuk-tuk driver who was driving me around every day. And Morgan was a magical light. And he really showed me the place he was from and grew up. So I felt like I got a little bit of an inside track of that. And all of the, I don't know, just all of the depth of his being kind of translated to me, to most people I met, so at the end of the day, I was thinking the whole time I was in this whole, same as walking around San Francisco, I have this whole idea about the way things could be better for people, you know, and with absolutely no ability to make any of that happen as me, you know, as this
Yeah.
musician, rock and roll drummer. So what I can do is just what is presented with me in the moment, you know.
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, I want to talk about this for a minute before we get to I want to get to the book too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, because that's a really big subject, and and first of all, as what you can do, you do a lot, and you just kind of like as a rock and roll drummer. What do you mean as a rock and roll? You do a lot, and I think you and I have these conversations quite a bit off camera, in our as friends, and this idea of coming up against the places where things are not okay, seemingly not okay, and how do we reconcile that while also doing what we can, and what you sparked for me was this idea of like that I come up against all the time, which is, well, this is samsara, right? This is a place of, some people say this is where we come and our souls learn, and we have these hard experiences and we have these good experiences, and that's true, and suffering exists from the Buddhist perspective. So in many ways it's not changing, it's there are ways it's not going to change, and yet and there are these ways that it does change, and we're always on that hamster wheel of trying, of doing our best. You know what I mean? And that's what that sparked for me. I was like, there's a quote by the Dalai Lama that's never give up, just never give up. And but every once in a while it's just this, I think the practice, I know for me, is how to not give up on that internal, give up hope, how to still hold that wish for all, so the release of suffering, while also being understanding that it doesn't change. And that's hard.
It's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard. And, the window into how, kind of how to be with it is in our moments, right? I think, at least that's all I can do is in this moment, what's present here for me to witness or to do, to act or to be still, like what is present, and to continue to come back to that center of myself in meditation, in spiritual practice, in contemplative practice, continue to come back to that center of myself, that when I'm reaching out and feeling like I need to fix or need to do, how that just doesn't feel aligned, with me. And I know that at the Sacred Stream, we have that class, Path of Service, which is just such a powerful class because it's for people who have this sense, this empathic sense, like we want to do something. And so they forge off into the world and start doing, and they're not taking care of themselves. And then they stop being able to do, either the body breaks down or their emotional life breaks down. And it's really a balance. And I don't mean to, I think for people who are very energized to be out in the world and really making a change and have the energy for the boots on the ground kind of thing, I don't want to, say that I don't hope that we all could find that energy and find those ways to help. But I also have to be kind to myself in some way and realize, that what I'm to do here, I must be aligned with my own path. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, as a musician, and I think we've talked about this too, Laura, because we're both musicians. For a long time, I had a big struggle within myself, like, what am I really doing in the world? Because I'm doing something that I love so much. What am I doing to help? What am I, we just saw some video of a friend of my husband's who's, in the Ukraine, like with army gear on, fighting right now. And, you know, you see that and you just think of these valiant efforts in the world and how much the world needs those valiant efforts. And then you look at me like, you know, showing up at a gig and playing a rock show and, you know, and it's just, you know, it's been a battle within myself for a long time to figure out, you know, to just figure out how to be okay with my path. This is my path, you know, and to settle into it and just to be present for what shows up, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a couple of things to say.
Good.
One, you know, I think I've told you about, you know, I've had a similar, when I was actively, you know, primarily a full-time working musician thing. What am I doing? What good is this doing? You know, and how am I helping? And feeling a similar pull to that I need to be doing something else. And you know, and I've since come to terms with that doing music is actually doing a lot. It is how being who you are in the world is valuable. And you know, you have a story in the book about the little boy who comes up and you give him the drumsticks and he's like whack, and you teach him to whack, and it's like, and it goes on to talk about like how that release, how that you know, is a place that people can you know, that you know, having their voice and having and there's so much to music that's healing, that's expressive. But beyond that, you know, beyond just that, you know, we tend to gradate, like if someone, you know, oh, that person who can go and, you know, feed a million starving children, well, that is amazing. But you know what, if they come home and they're mean to their wife or they kick their dog, they're not, you know, it's like, sorry, I'm conflating a few things, but we have these ideas. But I think, you know, you and I have talked about the book, Lynn Twist, that wonderful activist who is amazing. And, you know, in interviewing her myself, I just felt like there was part of me that was like, wow, I could never achieve all of that she has achieved and all that she's done with the Amazon rainforest, feeding 100 people. But the heart of her book really spoke to me and to so many people about this idea that not everyone, that's not what everyone's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, some people, that's what they're supposed to be doing. So it energizes them. For someone who's supposed to be doing something else, it will exhaust them, or it will, you know. So I think, you know, and I want to get to your book, you know, your book really illustrates so much about your path and the insights you've had on the path and how you reconcile all the parts of yourself, all the things that you do, being, you know, a spiritual person, you know, a spiritual seeker, and also a spiritual counselor, along with being a rock drummer who likes to drink whiskey on occasion, and, you know, all of these things. So yeah, maybe I didn't say a whole lot there, but I, you know, that was relevant. But I just feel inspired to say, you know, we're yeah, what we do is not always defined by the external, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And thinking about I should be
mhm.
different. I mean, that just taps into that big feeling that we're just not enough,
Yeah.
you know? And to me, you know, that is a big theme in the book, is coming to a place where actually I am enough, you know, I am worthy of knowing the divine, worthy of knowing myself as a piece and a part of this great divine flow that's happening. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've contributed this like remarkable book.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
That, you know, I think we'll, and here's the great photo on the back of Clem.
My face is hidden. I like it.
And you know, I think the book will speak to a lot of people who are trying to make sense of their place in the world. You know, there's so much, questioning these days about spirituality and, from New Ageism to nihilism and everything in between, and you're really demonstrating your path and your questioning and your thoughtfulness and your insights with this book. And I think it's, and it's beautifully written, and you tell some really lovely, lots of lovely stories. And so I think it's inspiring.
Thank
And
you
on
so
this
much.
path of spirituality and artist, being an artist.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the kind words. And, as it was kind of coming together, I realized, it's the thinking about what I would most want people to take away from the book. And I kind of see it as just an illustration as to what happens when you stand up from the meditation mat. What happens when you sit down and you ding the bell and you light the incense and it's magical, and you fall into that center, into your heart, and it's peaceful. And then you get up and you're in traffic and you're in a difficulty in your relationship, or for me it's like I get up and I start driving, and I'm driving a bunch of people who have needs that I need to take care of, and then I'm getting
Driving
on
the
stage,
van, the
driving the van, yeah, the tour bus, right, and driving all over the place, and then and wanting to be fully in the world, not thinking like going into the world like, like I'm in this spiritual zone, don't mess me up, I'm in, like there's one part of it where I'm meditating and this bird is really loud, and I'm like see this rise of frustration, like, oh, the bird, I'm trying to meditate. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I think people are really looking for, okay, we have this spiritual life, and then we have our life. And, I think we are really good at compartmentalizing things. And so for us to be able to realize that it's just one thing, like I get the same lessons, like as I'm, dealing with my night of rock and roll, I have the same, aversions and, wanting things to be different, all the things that I'm dealing with on the meditation mat, I'm dealing with in real time. I mean, it's all the same thing. In Buddhism, we're looking for our cravings, our aversions, our ignorance. We get to see those in every single moment. Yeah.
Well, you say in the book, the drum teaches me to know all things God.
Yeah.
Can you say anything more about that?
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, and I grew up during the 80s. So, and I grew up in, Orange County was at that time the most conservative county in the nation. And, there was a lot of the born again Christian movement was super huge. And it was really, I mean, I had a science teacher who didn't want to teach evolution, things like that were really happening, when I was in high school. So, um, so, and I had, been raised Catholic and saw how, Catholicism treated my mother because, she didn't take communion because, she was practicing family planning, right? And when I figured that out, I just thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, thinking my mother as one of the most, Christ-like people I know. I mean, just the most generous person, the most loving person. And so that kind of ended for me, around that time. And so God, the idea of God, I mean, no, it was not. I really, you know, I don't know that I would have said I was an atheist, because I always had this sense of a continuance. I always had a sense of, in my dreams, I would see a lot of other lives that I didn't know where they came from, things like that. I had moments of like complete, like beyond being ecstatic, kind of moments as a young child. But I just pushed it all away and said, we're just here. We end up as dust and there's no continuum. I just kept trying to tell myself these things because I don't, because I'm an American and I am who I am. And that's just everybody that I knew. I mean, most of my friends today would never say that they believe in God, I think, so it's something that I've really wrestled with when I kind of realized one day that I deeply believe in the divine. And, going to the sacred stream, studying at the sacred stream really started to put the pieces together of what I mean by the divine, and really understanding that. So, for me, in the third chapter of the book, I say God for the first time, and I thought, oh boy, I'm going to lose a bunch of people once God comes into the picture. But I do believe it's important for us to have a conversation about, why do we push it away so much? Why do we push away the idea that maybe we're all connected, maybe we're all one thing, maybe we're all vibrating in infinity all together.
And the term God means something different to so many people, so it's hard to know how someone's taking that word, and in a lot of ways, God, or the idea of the divine, has been hijacked by certain elements of certain religious traditions. I don't want to say the whole the whole tradition or all traditions, but it certainly has been hijacked. And I think, as a collective, across traditions and across cultures, we are really emerging from this time where this hijacking has occurred. And so then there are those of us who are like, data. It's data. There is no God. I'm going to die, and then I get to rest. Finally, there's that extreme, the materialist extreme, and then there's the way others woo-woo side of it, or the extremist side of it that's like still defining God in very restrictive terms, or the divine in very restrictive terms. But then there's this whole in between. And it really feels like we are emerging from that, as I said, that hijacking, and reconsidering and redefining our own, experience and relationship to spirituality or the divine. And that's your book. Your book is in that, as part of that lexicon. And a fun part of the book, like really people are going to enjoy it, because the story is being told by Clem, the drummer, the great drummer, the rock and roll drummer, who plays in, sorry, I laugh, I'm not laughing, it's like, it's great, like it's a Zeppelin cover band, and it's not just any Zeppelin cover band, it's a major, you guys get huge crowds, you tour all over the country, all over the world, and it is a rock show. It's a masterful show, and Clem is beating the hell out of the drums, like majorly badass playing the drums. And so the book is they're stories from the road, stories from your time as a bartender in Manhattan, and the writers and the different artists you encountered there, and the different characters you encountered. There's like lots of really interesting stories. It really is a little bit of it's not quite on the road Kerouac, but it's got a flavor of that Beat generation, which is something that you're really influenced by, I think.
Informed me.
Yeah. And so, it's really fun reading about how you reconcile these aspects of your life, and how they actually, doesn't need to be reconciled. They are the same. They flow together, and you making sense of it.
yeah, when you think about, okay, if I just put aside all of the, all the stuff about, magical thinking, or all of the, everything that, a materialist would say about the divine, right? Which I have a big part of myself that is a very cynical person. So I completely feel all of those things. And sometimes I feel them very strongly. Um, but even if we don't say it the way, like, even if I don't say the divine,
Mhm.
the idea, like, I love, I really love Alan Watts, and I love that I'm gonna misquote him, but he says it's as if he sees somebody, who across from him, and he says, "Ah, Shiva, there you are. Look at the form that you've taken."
Mhm.
And I just love that idea of being able to see the people around us as just as divine as anything else. And to me, opening to compassion is really the only way that we're really going to continue in the world, understanding how we can be with the difficult, right? And I think to be able to open to the possibility that we could actually see other people as just as divine as anything, as a fellow traveler, as a fellow, um, connected in that way. I think, I don't know. I think it's really an important thing for us to think about these days.
It's helpful,
Yeah.
right? When you can try. I mean, it's a huge spiritual practice to try to not see the person as other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard. And we notice that, when that othering is what creates wars, and what creates, um, a lot of pain and suffering that we inflict on each other, because we're seeing the other as other.
Yeah.
To see us as each other. I just, there's that story in the book about that John Oliver interview with the Dalai Lama, and at the end, like, John Oliver holds out his hand, and the Dalai Lama takes John Oliver's hand, and he just puts it up on his cheek, like, in the most loving way. And John Oliver just lost it. Like, you see him just become like this giggling little thing, because it's just such a, just that one little tender motion. I mean, what would it be like to greet the world in that kind of tenderness, even with people who are difficult, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of, a conversation I was having recently, but, you bring up the Dalai Lama, and it, it's, it's this level of authenticity. There's no pretension.
Mm.
And I was thinking about that with all of my monk friends who are you know further, not all monks are realized or for as far along the path, so you can run into all kinds of things with anybody. We're all human, and that's the thing we have to keep in mind with our spiritual teachers,
Mm-hmm.
or anyone. But the ones who are really there, or who are really holding it down, to me, there's just absolutely no pretension.
Yeah.
There's no pomp and circumstance. I mean, there are in certain aspects of their tradition, which they're expected to participate in,
Yeah.
but there's nothing between you and them.
Yeah.
And the Dalai Lama, it's just like a complete and full comfort with your skin. There's nobody doing this,
Yeah.
which we get a lot here in the States,
Yeah.
I'm the teacher,
Yeah.
and,
The defensiveness. I was thinking about this a lot. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was thinking about that in India, because I went to Tiruvannamalai, which is where the Ramana Maharshi um, ashram is, and there are a lot of spiritual communities that come from the West into that town, and a lot of teachers. And I was really thinking about the teachers. There were some teachers who've had, different scandals, who seem to kind of show up in the town. And I was thinking about, a teacher, and, looking at, I was taking, I take meditation lessons, just kind of like a personal kind of exploration for myself that I've done for the last year and a half with this teacher, Ishtar. I was really realizing that to me, the mark of a great teacher is they're undefended.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that when you have a problem with the teacher, they're not pushing up their agenda, they're listening and incorporating their own knowledge to help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not feeling like you're attacking them
Yes.
because you're saying that you have a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and the great teachers in my life, which I've had many,
Yeah.
um, and you and Isa as well, you're not defended, right, when as a teacher.
Hope. I
And
hope.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
I,
I think
I
that's a
hope.
mark. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
thank you for saying that. And I do think, and I think it's always a practice. And, we all have the places that we're working on, no
Hmm.
one's arrived, I mean,
Hmm.
everyone's arriving.
Yeah.
Now maybe there are probably some realized beings here if some of the
Hmm.
spiritual traditions are true, but most are not. And that's okay. And so then it's just always a practice. And I think that what you're calling undefended is this place that has a comfort level with vulnerability
Yeah.
and the strength that comes with that. Like that is true strength, you know.
Mhm.
And most of us are, most of the world is in this kind of dualistic place and in relation to power. So a lot of this, posturing, whether it's
Mhm.
on stage,
Mhm.
you got to kind of posture a little bit on stage. That's part of the fun.
Mhm.
That's the theatrics of it. So maybe I'm not, but posing, whether as a teacher or as, a powerful person or something like that, when you're posing, it's a way of trying to hold power, over something,
Mm.
because you're not at peace with your vulnerability. But when you encounter someone like, these teachers that you've talked about, or like the Dalai Lama, it's just like, whoosh, there's
Yeah.
nothing, you don't hit up against anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say that I can tell that I'm not realized because photographs of me playing drums cause me such agony.
Oh,
Because that's when I realize, like, you have a lot of work to do, lady, because I get so upset by these monkey faces I make when drumming. Like,
oh
that's
God.
that's the tell for me. The day that I can just see any photo of myself and not care what it looks like, that'll be the day that I've arrived.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you have that awareness is like huge. Like that's way far down the line. Although I can assure you that's not what anyone else is saying when you're drumming.
That's well,
They would-
that's the thing. When I'm drumming, I'm feeling like I'm in this place, in this zone, and then you see a still photo of it, and it's like, oh, it's like an athlete, It's like,
yeah.
you're exerting. Nobody looks that great when they're totally exerting.
Well, you need the photographer to be a bit, more thoughtful in their choice of shots. I mean, we can pause this video anywhere along the way, and I'll be like, oh, like, "Ah," you know,
I know.
like, so,
I,
yeah.
I know. I have to apologize to so many photographers for giving them listen, I don't want to see any photos of my face when I'm drumming.
Well, or maybe you're just expressing yourself and giving them some instruction because which is okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
I want to read a quote from the book, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
on this somewhat on this subject. I am certain. Is that okay? It's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
I am certainly not a model for your standard recovery story, but I do have a gift for the path. I am happy, however, pretty nearly consistently happy. This after years of suffering, many dark internal conflagrations I felt defined by. When I remember the slow progress to put out these fires and the work and time required, I feel I do have something to offer folks who seek my counseling. Most importantly, I am fearless in my investigation of the concepts that keep me from knowing the divine, keep me from knowing myself as worthy of God's love, love that loves without boundary. And Oh, and I'll finish that. Nothing can hold me back from living my truth as it is aligned with my own lighted way. This is integrity, like that groove in the mud that makes the gallop happen in a rock song. When you find it, all limits break loose and there's no getting out. Very lovely.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah. And, and you're talking about those, self conflagrations, that being hard on yourself and, and being on stage, you're always, it's even more that, putting yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I feel like, I've just been so fortunate in my life, and, just I'm kind of overwhelmed with gratitude for, my life and the way that it kind of went. And but and the thing that I have to be thankful for, the thing that was the most painful for me, and at times, as I was just saying, still is I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in a culture where, the the visual was the body was very judged. And as a young woman, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, and I developed just the screaming negative voice about myself and about my physical being. And so what I did was I escaped. I escaped first through intellectualism and reading. I was just a maniac reader, and it was like, oh, everybody else does the sports and everybody else does that, but I'm going to do this stuff, right? And then, once I started going to started spiritual practice, then I could escape. When I had these openings, I could escape into that neutrality of, lightness, and kind of bypass all of those things that would come up, and completely denied the body, in the way that a lot of, I think, spiritual practice tells us to.
Right.
Or that we mistake the messages in some of the lessons for thinking that we need to deny the body. And and coming to, and there's just there was so much pain around that, and I've been embarrassed to talk about it, not so much because I thought that it was shameful that I was going through it, but just that, so many other people deal with such, really major trauma in these different ways. And this whole thing that I was suffering with felt so trivial, to deal with my internal negative voice and this, eating disorders and these different kind of things based around the body. And yet I know now that, suffering is suffering. And that was really what opened me to trying to understand how to get through that stuff, was what brought me to spiritual practice. So I have to be thankful for it in some way.
Well, I think comparative trauma, happens, especially for us who, feel like, we've been fortunate and others have it worse, that's understandable. But, what you describe, and what I know you're talking about and you go into in the book too, is something that is actually, certainly it's a whole cultural experience for women, even still today. There's, when we come back to that idea of, samsara not ending, it's like, it hasn't, it didn't change with our generation. It hasn't changed with, the next generation, our children's generation, and it isn't changing with the next one. A little bit, but it's, and what we have with how women have been viewed and the messages we give women. I mean, right now today, teenagers are teenage girls, and I mean, it's not to take away from teenage boys who have their own set of problems, but they are struggling with the same, physical identity, body image, body shaming, eating disorders. And this is epidemic.
Yeah.
And people, these kids are suicidal, these kids are depressed. And I think that you telling your story is so important, and you confronting it within yourself is also healing. I think everything we do to heal ourselves is changes the world.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that piece in the book that really addresses it, where it's just kind of a stream of consciousness of kind of going into that. I was really struggling, and it wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, so. And I was just really overwhelmed by falling into that hole of negativity, and about myself, especially about my physical body, about my relationship with food, about the constant weight gain, weight loss, all of that stuff. I was really spinning around in it. And one morning I went to I might have told you this already, Laura, but I'll just say it here. I decided I was going to go to a spin class in my neighborhood, right? And I live in a neighborhood with a lot of young folks, very gorgeous young folks. And I was in a class with about 12 other women who were about 24 years old. And we were in front of a big mirror, and we were all spinning. And I just, felt like it felt like me spinning. And I just walked out of there, and I just felt so terrible, just about my body, about myself, about I'd gained weight, all of the things. And I was walking down the street, and I just felt this just ocean of shame within me. And I came home, and I thought, well, this is really present. Sit in it. So I sat for an hour, and I just asked for the shame to rise, and I asked to feel it fully. And as soon as I sat down, I had this image of a fire hose in my side, pumping this gray ash all through me. And it was like this, the heaviness, the depression, all the stuff was like this just ash. And I was trying to look in my meditation, where do I not feel it? Nowhere. It's complete. It's like this. And it was so painful. My body was racked as I was allowing shame. Where does shame even come from? I didn't even know where it was coming from, but it was just so present. And I got up after an hour, and I was like, I can't take it anymore. My body was shaking because it had been so painful to sit without moving and just feel it fully. And I came in, and I sat down out here in the window, and I thought, I'm just going to write a letter to my mentor. I have a dear mentor in New York, and I'm going to write a letter to her about what I just experienced. And I wrote about 4 or 5 paragraphs, and then I looked down, and I thought, I think I've never said this before. I think I've never written this before. I think I've never spoken it out loud. It's like what I've carried with me.
Yeah.
And that's what that piece was. And when I wrote that, I thought I would never, I would put this in a lockbox. I would never let anybody see it. And it's in the book.
And honestly, Clem, I can't say it enough. It's like you are describing a collective shame.
Yeah.
Like, as you were talking about those 24-year-olds spinning and your experience, I was thinking, and they probably many of them also left feeling terrible about themselves, finding that one imperfect thing, and we've really, so it's collective. It is a collective shame, and we have to out it.
Yeah. And it really is connected to that understanding of the divine, because ultimately what I was feeling was that I was not worthy of love, not worthy of unconditional love. I did a meditation once where I had to bring up, a feeling of unconditional love coming back to me, and I just blanked out in the whole meditation. And I came to, and I was kind of like, oh, that was weird. I wasn't even able to follow along. I just kind of blanked out. Let me do it again. Did the meditation again, same thing. Like, the whole meditation was, going through about how to like receive all of this like unconditional love, and same thing, totally gone. And I thought, do I not feel worthy of unconditional love? And I brought up my mother, who I know loves me in that way. And I saw there was a little piece of me that felt like I had to be something to gain that love.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be different to gain that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when everything broke open, you know, for me to
Mm-hmm.
realize, like, what if I am unconditionally loved? What if there is this energy in the world that offers constant unconditional love? Then I am worthy, then I am good enough, then I'm something beyond that suffering that I'm feeling within me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing, because I think a lot of people will relate to that and will relate to that, and it helps them. I love talking to you. We have to do this more.
It's so fun. Well, I have ideas.
I know you do. I know you do. I love your ideas. And you know, and we will do more. I have a feeling my cat is going to try to do a little catwalk behind me before we close.
Yay.
Although he's not. He's just spying.
Jack, hello.
But so what's next? What's next for you?
Well, let's see. So I have all this stuff to do around the book. Hi, Jack. Ah, there he is. I feel very honored that Jack is making an appearance during my podcast. See, this is what I think.
I have to tell you, he's only made one other appearance like this when I was on with a big meditation conference, like as one of the spirituality conferences of teachers, and he decided. So it's a good mark here. It's a positive.
I love Jack so much. He's so sweet. Yeah, just dealing with you know, promoting the book, and then we have a whole bunch of Zepparella shows coming up. I have a new project called Clem and Clearlight, and that's been really fun with this great guitarist Daniele Guittardo. We're writing songs, and I love that. That's really fun. So we'll be playing shows doing that, and yeah. Bye, Jack.
That's great. That's great. And so you have some shows coming up with Zepparella, and people can and we'll put this on the website, but do you want to mention your website and Zepparella's website too?
Yeah, so the book is called From Bonham to Buddha and Back, and that'll probably be in the end. A little link to the Amazon page to that. Yes, you have a early copy, so it looks a little different.
Oh, is it different? Sorry.
Yeah, but no, but it looks about the same. It's fine.
Okay.
And then clemthegreat.com is my website, and that's got links to my websites for the band and for the different bands, and for my spiritual counseling is on there as well. Great. And the book. So I think that's kind of the hub of me. Clem the Great. Yeah.
Great.com. Yeah. Great. Well, so fantastic talking to you. Just love it. And we will do more soon.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much.
Thank you.